we have a question to ask. So this is the question, is it very popular among Russian designers? What is the judging criteria? Because everyone is interested. How you are judging gardens?
Well, I think the great thing about the Royal Horticultural Society system is that all of the other shows internationally use it as the template. So if you get it right here, you can almost do it anywhere. And we have a two-stage system. Well, actually, it's 3 stages. First of all, designers submit a plan to the society, which goes before a selection panel. Selection panels are always made up of construction experts, design experts, horticulturalists, and they assess on paper whether the garden has been conceived well enough to be put into a show. And then once the garden's built at the show, the designer also submits a brief where they talk about who their intended client is, what the situation is geographically, what the soil's like, what the aspect's like, the kinds of plants and the kind of feeling they want to portray in the space. Once we have that, and the garden is here, we have assessors that make up a team of 3, and they come meet the designer. The designer gives them a 2-minute introduction to the garden, things that we haven't heard before, and then the assessors have 15 to 20 minutes normally, sometimes longer, sometimes it doesn't take that long, to really interrogate the garden. And they're looking at a whole cross-section of criteria we mark against. So the first thing always is, does the garden live up to the brief? The designer's told us it's meant to be X. Has it really ticked that box, or are we left in a little bit of confusion? Do we really know what's happening? Once we've gone past that, we become very particular about the design layout. So on plan, if you're like a bird looking down, is it spatially correct? Is there enough space in the borders? Can you move around furniture? Is it generous? Does it feel good? And then we kind of stand back and look 3-dimensionally at the proportions in balance. Sometimes you see gardens where you've got huge trees and it drops down to very low plants. We don't like that. It's not particularly realistic. You know, is there a good scale between the masses in the void, the spaces, and the spaces that have been created? And overall, do you get a real sense of achievement? Because within 4 weeks, you can have amazing gardens that are very difficult to create, and you can have things which are kind of like, yeah, it's easy to do, that's not really a huge scale of endeavour. Once we've gone past that, we look at construction. Is it beautifully constructed? Is it flawless? We have this thing, is it excellent? And excellence is absolute precision. There's no faults anywhere. It's like a perfect thing. And then importantly, because we're a horticultural society, we look at the composition of the plants. So we look at the planting design, the colours, the textures, the shapes, the rhythm. Is that good? Because that's just one aspect of the colours play well together. And then we look at horticultural association. So are the plants actually going to live together long term? Because we want visitors to the show to be inspired, we want to inspire them with good horticulture, best practice. So we want plants that grow in shade, plants that grow in sun. We also want to see the way the plant would be in maturity demonstrated. So if a herbaceous perennial just clumps up, then we would want to see that. If a herbaceous perennial kind of makes a block and then bits run off, we want to see that. So we're really particular about it. And then we look at the quality of the plants. Is it planted to demonstrate maturity? And are the plants show quality? So are they in the prime of health? Are they big? Do they look like it's mature? And overall, we kind of add all of that up, and then we get to a point, and the number of points gives us the medal as a guide. So that's assessing. The next day, come back the assessors with 3 judges and a moderator. So it's a team of 7. And the assessors kind of present the garden to the judges. The judges walk on and have a look. We discuss between us everything that's been said by the designer, everything that's been interrogated by the assessors. And normally, we're kind of already all roughly around the same medal, so there's sometimes a little bit of voting between different aspects of those criteria, because each criteria can go from unsatisfactory, poor, good, very good, excellent. So there's sometimes judging, which means that we move up and down the number of points, and sometimes if a garden's on a cusp between silver, gilt and gold, we all want it to get to gold, so we're looking at ways that we can push the medal up. And the moderator does a really important job, and he basically sits across all of the shows. So the moderator that will be at Malvern will be the same moderator at Chelsea, will be the same moderator at Hampton Court. And his job is to make sure that we're consistent in the delivery of the medals. So what we said is a bronze medal here will be the standard of bronze medals across all of the shows. what we've said is a gold medal here will be the standard of gold medals across all of our shows. So it's a really, really stringent criteria, it's a really tough process, but what it does mean is that when we give a gold medal, it's because a garden is excellent.
So as far as I understand, they're not really a competition between the gardens.
No.
So just to understand whether the garden that you have made is good, very good, excellent.
Yeah, so in theory, every single garden at any show could get a gold medal. The only person you're ever really in competition with is yourself. So as designers, we often say, no one else can have my idea, so I'm not in competition with anybody else. It's what generates that amazing feeling of camaraderie when things are going a bit wrong, people are helping each other. It's because they know that you can get gold here, he can get gold there, so that's not a competition. And Best in Show has never really been a competition because it is basically the garden that has the most points is the one that will be Best in Show, because we've removed the subjective element out of it. We don't want judges to feel that they've been swayed by a strong voice. It's very much what's on paper leads our decisions.
It's very important, really. And may I ask you also to show us some examples, what is good, what is bad in this garden, what maybe can be criticized, because we need some examples. It's very interesting, you know, also to know what is...
Okay, well, I mean, one of the joys of this garden is this is a solid gold. So internally we have this thing where, because gold can be from, let's say, 28 points to 36 points, so solid puts it at 32, 34. There's no question of it moving. So here we can kind of look at excellence. We'll struggle a bit with things that aren't brilliant, but then what we must bear in mind, with this garden in particular, on your feedback sheet, you'll see that everything is either very good or excellent. So I can't show you anything that's terrible that we would cry about, but I can show you where we're really, really picky. So if we start with the great things, then you'll see all through the planting, this is planting that judges love, because we can still see bits of soil, and we want to see that because that's realistic, but it feels like a garden in maturity. It looks like a space which is maybe 3-4 years old, so we get a sense of a proper garden. The range of plants is interesting because it shows us what's in flower now, but it also gives us seasonality. There are things that are going to carry on into midsummer, and there's a sense of succession which we really like. Also, the quality of these plants is outstanding. There's no disease, there's no kind of dieback, there's nothing that looks a little bit weak and a bit sorry for itself. And also with early shows, the shows that happen in May and June, there's always the chance that things are soft grown and they've been imported, or they've been grown in a hothouse, and then they come out and they get a bit of a chill and they kind of do this. There's not a hint of that. So for us, this planting is excellent. So we love that. We look at things like the trees, they're a decent size. They look, again, kind of beefy, mature, and they're in balance with the rest of the hard landscaping. We really struggle with gardens where we're being told they're like a woodland garden, let's say, and actually you end up with very flimsy little trees. We kind of think, well, the story's not there. But when we're told, you know, it's a garden that's been in existence for a while and you see a big tree, you just kind of feel more comfortable. And it's a sense check thing, really. If you look at construction in gardens, we want to see that the gap in the paving, the jointing, is as it should be. So if it's butt jointed, that has to be crisp paving so there's no wobble. If it's been told to us that it's an aged, worn path, then we don't want to see defined edges and we want to see the gradation. We like to see that just as a path that's been walked over for 50 years, let's say, that the smallest stones are in the middle where you're walking and it's moving out. So we look at that kind of thing. I'm struggling to find you something that's not amazing in this garden, but one of the things, because we're picky, in detailing like this, there's always a real danger that there's just the slightest wobble. So the inside of this isn't precise, but it's millimetres out. So for us, it's very good, but it wasn't excellent in this case. And that's one of the very few things that kind of move us from the maximum points of 36. The other things that we think about are the generosity of spaces. So, you know, if you were sat there and I was sat here, would our knees be touching or would it be generous and walk through? So that's really good. We always look at little details like at the back here where you've got a step in paving. We want a deliberate step or things dead on. We don't like a small space because we kind of don't know whether the designer intended it or whether it's had to happen to cope with something that happened on site. So we kind of like straight answers. So for us, a little detailing becomes a little bit of a question mark, and we kind of think, okay, it's been executed very well, but we're not sure, so we're not at excellent. So we kind of look at all of those things really. Also, paving choices are interesting for us. If in your brief you said that it's a space that's inhabited by the public, then the choice of material is crucial, because how long will it really last? Is it safe when it's wet? Are you going to slip over? All of those things come into consideration. This, in the brief, spoke beautifully about the kind of space it was. This paving's amazing. It's a big, beefy size. It looks beautiful and smooth. It's got a slight texture. So we kind of think that's excellent because the designers really thought through all of those steps. But as I say, you know, in this garden we struggle to find things we don't love. But if I were really picky, there's an interesting thing that the planting at the front is much denser and fuller, and as you travel back it's slightly less full, and we're not really sure 100% whether it's because the plants were beginning to run out and you're a bit nervous, or whether you were really trying to tell us that in the shade the plants are a bit more spaced. So again, it's made a question, not an answer. So in our minds that's kind of, well, it's really, really good, but we're just not sure. So you know, we're really very, very strict and focused about it, almost like an OCD when we're going through all of those things.
But for us, this is the most interesting thing, of course. And maybe you can give some advices to the Russian designers who are also willing and trying to participate in such shows.
Yeah, of course. Well, the first thing I would say is have a go. The worst thing that can happen is you don't enjoy it. Medals are interesting to a point, but actually what's more interesting is that regardless of the medal you ever get at a show, there is someone who will love the work you've done, and that's really important. The other thing which I think is so important is, in England, our gardens are made up of everybody else's plants. Our endemic range is very minimal, so we're using other people's plants from around the world, and horticulture is based on an exchange of ideas. So my first thing is, you know, please apply, come to the United Kingdom, show us the way you think, inspire us with other ideas, because we're used to our own thoughts. It's really refreshing to see that. But think about, at a show, how are you going to get a photograph? So this garden's brilliant because you've got two solid backdrops, which means anybody standing in front of it gets the garden, not what's going on around. That's crucial. Think about where you're going to source the plants in advance, so you know you've got good quality plants. You can really read the story. And always, for a first-time designer, try and work with a contractor in the United Kingdom if you're coming here, or with a local contractor to the show you're going to, who's done it 2 or 3 times, so they know what to do in a crisis. They know about things like water connections. They know about how you can kind of, where the plants would go after the show, kind of communities that might benefit from them, so that you get the best possible result. And then come and fall in love with English gardening shows, I guess.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.